Hello, everybody. This is Hong with Cash Property Inc. Thank you for tuning in. And today I am very excited to bring on a colleague from Bigger Pockets. A big shout out to our Bigger Pockets family.
Bigger Pockets.
So I have with me Jordan Berry, and I'm excited because Jordan is going to talk to us about laundromat investing and how that can be a part of our real estate portfolio. So Jordan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then we're going to jump right into the content of what it is that you can bring into the whole real estate portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And before I forget, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not an accountant. So all of the information that I'm presenting is really just my ideas, my advice, my opinion. So before you implement any of it, get somebody else's opinion on this. Show them my video and see what they say. Okay. So just a little disclaimer there. So.
Well, I'm Jordan Berry, and I started Laundromat Resource and laundromatresource.com. And basically what that is just a website that is geared towards providing information about how to own and run laundromats as a way to kind of put you on a path towards financial freedom. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the goal for me, and that's a goal for, I think, a lot of people who own laundromats. And so that's kind of what we're doing. I'm married. I have 2 kids, 8 and 6, and we have a giant tortoise. He weighs over 100 pounds. He's big. And yeah.
That's over 100 pounds. So like I'm 125, so he's close to me.
Pretty close to you.
That's
yeah. My kids turtle surf on him. They'll stand on his back and ride him around the yard.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
Pretty funny. Yeah.
Okay. So now what got me interested in wanting to have this call with you is because I actually bought a laundromat years ago. And I had that idea that, okay, I'm going to buy this laundromat. It's going to be part of my real estate portfolio, and it's going to bring me so much cash, right? Now, it was a great learning experience for me. I basically, learned how to fix washers. I learned how to fix dryers. I learned how to network with individuals within that industry. And so I think what you're offering is a fantastic resource. And I was on your website, and I got a ton of information that I wish I knew, like thinking back on my experience now, I'm like, oh yeah, I should figured out how much water I used back then, and I never did, right? Like I just and I was like, okay, this is how much they made. So you're absolutely right. Like the resource that you have on your website is super amazing, and a lot of people, when they go there, they'll be able to get a lot of good content and good information that will help them with this decision. So tell me, how many laundromats do you have?
I have 2 right now. Yeah.
What makes a laundromat a viable option for somebody?
Well, what's interesting about laundromats, there's a few things that make it a really great business to own. The first and foremost, I mean, if you're on Bigger Pockets or you're talking about real estate, one of the big buzzwords that goes around is cash flow. Everybody's looking for that cash flow. And it's interesting because the way that laundromats are valued, they're valued based off the net operating income, which is just your all your income minus your expenses, and they're based on a multiple of that value, and usually it's around between 3 to 4.5 times your NOI. It's been on the higher end lately because everybody's looking for cash flow. But
cash flow, just to be clear about that, right? Positive cash flow.
Positive cash flow, yeah. Money in your pocket, yeah, absolutely. And so, but what that means is that your cash on cash returns, to use a similar terminology, can be anywhere from 20 to 35%, and that's unleveraged cash on cash returns. So your cash flow is incredibly high if you're doing everything correctly with laundromats. So that's obviously really attractive. That's a really good return. It's hard to find that anywhere else, even in real estate. There's also tons of tax advantages to owning laundromats and being able to depreciate your property and to be able to funnel some of your expenses through the business. I'm not a CPA, but there are things that you can talk to your CPA about and your tax advisor. And they're also very just simple businesses. They don't You don't have inventory. You're not chasing people around to pay you money that they owe you. They pay up front. For the most part, they're doing the work. They're paying you basically to rent your machines from you.
Yes.
And it's all cash. And so it just makes it a very simple business. So high cash flow, very simple business, makes it pretty attractive for me, and I think a lot of people. So.
Okay, so if somebody's watching this, what makes them a good candidate to get into the laundromat business?
That's a great question. Well, so one of the main barriers to the laundromat industry is that there tends to be a high barrier of income with how much they cost. And so they're typically a significant amount of money, and they can be difficult to finance unless you can kind of figure out who will finance them. Not everybody will finance them. A lot of times the bank won't finance a laundromat unless they have very good records. And a lot of laundromats are mom and pop shops. And so people aren't keeping the best records, and they don't really know their numbers, and banks don't like that. It's just kind of risky. So there's a high barrier of entry in terms of the cost. So if you have money that you're looking to place, then that might make you a good candidate. And also, they're very simple and they don't take a lot of time. However, they do take a little bit of time for you to manage. And so if you can allocate anywhere, I usually spend 2 to 3 hours a week per laundromat. And I kind of lump those together so it kind of condenses it a little bit. But 2 to 3 hours a week. But there are times where it takes a little bit more. Stuff can kind of all go wrong at once every now and then, or you can lose an employee and you got to find another one. And so stuff can happen. But if you got a few hours a week and a little bit of money, that makes you a good candidate. Now, you don't have to have money. There are, in fact, I just wrote a blog post on this on the website on 8 different ways that you can finance a laundromat. And one of the great things about it is that because financing can be difficult to come by, a lot of times you can find owner financing for them. And a lot of times owners don't want to pay the taxes for a lump sum for their laundromat. They don't know anything on it, and they're going to get a bunch of money. They don't want to pay the taxes, so they would rather actually be the bank for you and lend you money to buy the laundromat. So you don't have to have money, but it helps.
Okay, gotcha. So now you mentioned a couple of things, so I just want to break it down a little bit more. So you mentioned about buying it from somebody. So do you recommend buying an existing location with equipment in it that is already at a good operating level, or do you recommend buying an existing one but is really badly operating and then you spend the effort to improve it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is the infamous "it depends" answer. It really does depend. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're someone who has money and you're just looking to put it somewhere and you want a relatively safe place to put it that's going to get you a pretty good return, then probably buying an already built, already operating, already just dialed in, almost turnkey laundromat is probably the way that you're going to want to go, because you're not looking to take on a little more risk in order to optimize your returns.
Right.
But if you're looking for that, then it might be worth looking at either a fixer-upper and finding the right fixer-upper laundromat to go in and put in new machines and kind of renovate and rebrand and do a grand reopening, and try to draw in customers to improve the business and jack up your returns. So if you're willing to take a little more risk, you can do that.
Okay.
The other option too is to build brand new. Now that can be expensive to do, but it also can be highly profitable. So
Gotcha.
those are kind of your main options.
Right. Because if you're doing something brand new, then you're also doing your market research on that area to make sure that that's going to be a good location for that store, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes into it if you're building your own, for sure.
Okay. So now so now you mentioned employees. Do
hmm
you have one or two at each location? Like what's the structure that you have with your?
Yeah, so good question. I have one laundromat that is an unattended laundromat. So it's just the doors are open, people come and go. There's nobody there for the
24/7.
majority of the day. So then I pay somebody to come in for about 2 hours every day, once in the morning, once in the evening, to just make sure everything's clean and running and functional, and let me know kind of what's going on there.
Okay.
So that's one of my laundromats. And my other laundromat is fully attended. So there's somebody there at all times just to help customers out. That one I have a little store in. And so they kind of man the store and they make sure the laundromat's clean and customers get the help they need. And
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Good. Wow. So two very different operating structures for each location. Okay.
Yeah,
Is
definitely.
there one that you recommend over the other for somebody who's just new in the field?
Yeah. So there's trade-offs for both. So the nice thing about an unattended store is that one of your biggest expenses is labor. And so when you're unattended, you're paying a relatively small amount for that labor.
Mm-hmm.
The downside is, depending on your location, that one in particular is in a little bit of a rougher location for me. And so I'm more susceptible to vandalism or just, homeless people hanging out there and that kind of thing. And so those are just things that you got to be aware of if you're going to have an unattended store.
Yes.
An attended store, I have much less problems and issues. Almost no vandalism, at least on the interior of the building. But I got to pay for that labor, and that labor is expensive. To have somebody there all day, it costs a lot of money. So it depends a lot on the volume that your store does of sales, the size of your store, the location of your store. It depends, I guess, is the answer again.
Oh, that's good. So now, one of the things that I do want to touch on, because I know that you're located in the US, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when this is being watched, it could be watched, by people in Canada as well as in.
Right.
So the content that we're talking about, how does it differ for Canadians, or does it differ?
Well, I have some coaching. I have 2 coaching clients right now in Canada, and so I've been learning more about Canadian laundromats lately. I don't see a whole lot of difference. I think the main difference is the Canadian dollar is different from the US dollar, and that's pretty much the main difference that I've seen so far. And so pricing may be different and those things, but everything's very similar. Like I said, it's a very simple business. And so the gist of it is that people pay to rent your machines. And so the purchase process might be slightly different, but by and large, it's pretty much the same.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that if you're Canadian, this is still relevant content. And
absolutely,
going down the laundromat route is an alternative way of growing your real estate portfolio.
Yeah, and I want to hit on that a little bit more, but just real quick, one of the great things about laundromats is that pretty much everybody needs food, shelter, and clean clothes. And when you're a real estate investor, you're investing in one of those 3 necessities, and laundromats hit another one. And so that makes them very stable kind of across the board. And so when there's, a downturn or, something like that in the economy, laundromats tend to be very stable. They may drop a little bit as people kind of tighten their belts a little bit, but by and large, it's a very stable industry across the board. And so I know a little bit about, that, Canada felt when the US, had their big crash in 2008 and 9 and following, and Canada felt a little bit of that, and that could worry some investors. But one of the great things about laundromats is that they tend to be very stable, especially during those times of turmoil where things are kind of uncertain, because it's one of the main necessities. People have to have clean clothes still. So.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, and the price point for somebody to come and do a load of laundry, right, it's relatively small in comparison to the other, you know, things that we buy that we don't really need, right?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah.
So now I know that on your website, there's a blog with information and there's videos. There's also a mastermind group that you do and a broadcast. So can you tell me a bit about those two items?
Yeah. So the idea behind the mastermind group is that in my experience, the laundromat industry has been a very closed group and a very people hoard information there. They don't like to help each other out. There's a spirit of kind of competitiveness in the industry, and so things seem to be closed off. And I don't think it needs to be that way. In a sense, you are competing against the laundromats in your immediate area, but really only, you know, probably 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4 in your area if you're in a very dense area. And everybody else in the entire world that owns a laundromat, you know, can help each other.
Right.
And even the ones that are in the same area can still help each other. And there's plenty of business for everybody. And so the idea behind the mastermind group is just to get people together to share ideas and to grow together, because like I said in the very beginning, the whole goal of this this kind of project of Laundromat Resource is to help people achieve financial freedom through laundromat ownership. And the best way to do that is together, I think. And so what we do is we just pair people together who want to be in a mastermind. We have free ones and we have paid ones, and you know, we just pair people who want to be in whichever kind of mastermind group, and we kind of give them a little bit of a guidance and then let them kind of run with it and talk about things that they're struggling with or things that are working in their laundromats that they can try, you know. And so that's the idea behind the mastermind group.
Oh man, I wish I knew about this resource or that it existed. Almost. So it's been about 10 years since I had my laundromat, and I wish that this was available back then, because it would have just it would have allowed me to consider keeping my laundromat a lot longer, right?
Yeah.
And so just being able to listen into what other people are going through, or some of their challenges, or you know what they did on those challenges, would have been super helpful. But also, it's just one of those things where you don't know what you don't know, right? And so if you don't have a question, just sitting in on the mastermind and listening to what other people are going through, it's like, oh yeah, I can do that, or I can implement that, or you know, that might be something for me to do in the future, right? And so it's just learning about stuff that you don't even know that you don't know.
Absolutely. And I found too, even just probably the biggest thing that I've taken away is learning how other people think about their laundromats. And you know, some people that's their job. They want that to be their job, so they actually sit in their laundromats all day long and talk to customers and help customers and do that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, and that's great if that's what you want to do. Me, on the other hand, I'm looking more for the freedom part of that, and that's why I got into the laundromat industry. And so, you know, it's been interesting to hear just the different ways that people think about laundromats, about how they run it. Some people run them really tight and low budget. They don't put money back into them, and they kind of let their machines go. And some people invest back into them. And so, you know, just hearing the different ways that people think about how to run their business has been really helpful too.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. So now, if you had to give sort of, I guess, the top 3 tips to somebody about operating and getting into a laundromat business, what would that be?
Getting into one or operating?
Oh, okay. Is that 2 different things?
I think there's kind of, yeah, I would say there are 2 different things. There's a certain set of knowledge that you got to have to be able to find. You know, one of the difficulties about laundromats is that they're all cash businesses, so that makes them attractive. But when you're getting into them, it can be difficult to verify how much money that laundromat's actually making. And if you remember, laundromats are valued based on how much money they're making. So if an owner says, hey, we're making $20,000 a month, and they're really making 12, well, that's a big difference, you know, and that's really going to affect your returns. But it can be very tough to verify that. And so, you know, there's different things that you need to know to get in. And then once you own it, then there's different kind of tips. But I'll give you, just to get in, one of the biggest things that I would say, so my experience getting into the laundromat industry, and a big part of what drives me doing what I'm doing with Laundromat Resource, is that I did not know anything about laundromats when I got in. Nothing, or business, or investing, anything. I didn't know. And so when I got into it, I had to rely on the broker that I was working with to help me find a laundromat and tell me what I needed to know. Well, it turned out the broker I was working with wasn't an honest broker, and he led me to buy a laundromat that was not a good laundromat, and ended up losing me a lot of money, like a lot of money. And so one of the things that I would say is, one, you need to find somebody who's trustworthy to help you, find a laundromat. And really what I would recommend is to find someone who's experienced and knowledgeable to just be a third party advisor to you if you're looking to buy laundromat. Somebody whose income doesn't depend on whether or not you buy that laundromat.
Okay, good point. Yes.
So that could be another laundromat owner, or that could be, we do that at Laundromat Resource, or, just a savvy real estate investor might be able to help you too. But somebody who, doesn't depend on you buying or not buying that laundromat for their income. Okay. That would be one really big tip, and I think that would have helped me a lot. Okay. A lot. Two, I think I would really encourage you to talk to some owners before you got into the industry, and just, hear what they have to say, figure out if that might be something that you're interested in, the lifestyle of the laundromats, something that would fit you and where you're at in your life. I think that would be really, really helpful. And three, just going through, and after you've made an offer and gotten it accepted, going methodically through due diligence and determining. I always say there's four main questions you have to answer during the due diligence. Is the laundromat making what the owner says it's making? Yes. Is the laundromat spending what the owner says it's spending? Because that's going to determine your NOI. Does this laundromat have a profitable future? I've had an experience. I had another experience buying a laundromat where I bought it, and the broker knew there was a new one being built a few blocks away, a brand new, bigger one, and I didn't know that. But when something like that happens, your laundromat may not have a profitable future, and so you need to answer that question before you buy it.
Okay, gotcha.
And then number 4 is, are there ways that you can add value to this laundromat going forward, and building equity in your laundromat and increasing business? So those are the main 4 questions that I say that you should try to answer during the due diligence.
Yeah. Like, there's just so many parallels with the way you would acquire a laundromat business, and I guess with any business then as well, to buying a real estate property, right? Because you talk about your NOI, you talk about your cash flow, the due diligence, like all of that is exactly the same thing. And then bringing on a third party that's not dependent on that sale, right? So, bringing on a coach or a mentor or somebody else that's in the industry, that's a huge benefit in making sure that you're going to buy a cash flowing property, right? So so it's very similar, right, as to how you would go about this. So that's great that you brought all that up. And
which is good.
The expenses is important too. So
which is why the laundromats can be a natural fit for somebody who's already a real estate investor, who's already been researching real estate. And later, if you want, we can talk about how you can really accelerate your wealth by using laundromats to buy real estate. And that's kind of what I've been doing. So
okay, all right, yeah, no. So Okay, so before we get into that one, I want to
Mhm.
get the 3 tips on that you would give somebody once they're in operation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's what I kind of tell my employees, that they have 2 main jobs as employees. The first job is to make sure the laundromat is spick and span. So keeping your laundromat clean is really important. Nobody wants to come, with their dirty clothes to come clean them to a dirty place, because after they pull them out of the dryer, it just doesn't feel good to have your clean clothes in a dirty place, and you want it to be clean. So that's very important. And the second thing I tell them as part of their job is to just make sure they are providing excellent customer service, because the way that people experience your laundromat is going to give them a feeling, and you want that to be a positive feeling, because people tend to make the majority of their decisions based on how they feel about a business or a person. And so if you can give them positive feelings when they're at your laundromat, then you're going to benefit from that. And then the other thing that I would say is just keep your equipment functioning and working, because there's a lot of moving parts with washing machines and dryers and boilers and change machines and vending machines, and but keeping that stuff functioning, that's what's making you the money. That's what people are renting. So every day that those are down is money that they're not making for you. So keeping those things functional is
Right. So
probably
now,
the
do
third
you
tip.
do most of the maintenance work yourself, or do you have a team?
I do some. I'm trying to do less and less. Just as my time gets more and more valuable doing other things. But there are some things. I mean, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of maintenance on the machines, and a lot of times the like suppliers of the machines will do free service schools, so they'll actually teach you how to work on their machines
Oh, that's
um,
great.
for free. And so they'll do like a Saturday half day, and they'll teach you how to do the different types of washers and dryers. So I did all those, and so there's a lot of things that I know that I can just fix real quick. If I can do it in under 20 or 30 minutes, maybe max, then I'll just do it a lot of times just to kind of get them back up and running, because it can take some time to get somebody out there, and they might need to go get a part, and then it can drag out to a few days. So if I think I can do it pretty quick, I'll do it. But otherwise, I'll have somebody come in and make sure they're all functioning and operational.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's great. Okay. So that's 3 tips then for buying, and then 3 tips for once you're in the operation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now you mentioned the possibility of a vendor take back, or where the owner helps finance that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So in real estate, we have that as well, called vendor.
Yep.
Right. So can you tell me a bit about how that, what that looks like?
Yeah. The majority of the time it happens in one of 2 ways. One way is that you get financing through, well, I'll just use some round numbers just so that we can kind of get an idea. But let's just say it's a small laundromat and they're selling it for $100,000. A lot of times you can go to a bank or some other kind of like a SBA loan or something like that and get a loan of say 65%. So you get a $65,000 loan,
Okay.
and you need to put $35,000 down. Well, if you don't quite have the 35,000, or you don't want to use all of your 35,000, a lot of times you can go to the owner and say, hey, I have this loan for 65,000. If you want 100, would you mind carrying 10, 15, 20,000, whatever kind of number as basically as a second loan on the business.
Okay.
And a lot of times they'll do that because either if they can't find another buyer and they don't really have a choice, then they'll carry it back because they want to sell it. or because they don't want to take a big tax hit. You know, as you can imagine, as those numbers get bigger and bigger, 100,000 becomes 500, becomes even $1 million plus for some laundromats. The tax hit can be pretty big if you're bringing in all that money.
That's
so,
right.
And then a lot of times, probably the main way that I've seen it is there's an owner who's owned a laundromat for a really long time and they don't have any debt on it and they want to sell it for $250,000. But getting all $250,000 up front is a big tax hit. And so they would rather kind of take it in pieces over a certain number of years. So basically they'll just say, okay, I'll carry back the loan and you pay me back, you know, at this rate over this amount of time. And so they'll pay their taxes that way. And it's good for you because you don't have to go through the process of trying to get an SBA loan or whatever. I don't know if there's a Canadian small business.
There is.
Yeah. So whatever that would be in Canada. I know here it's a big pain to get one sometimes.
Same here. Yeah. So it's the whole qualifying of
Totally.
the loans, and we've got stricter requirements and documentation that the banks or that the lenders will ask for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So getting an owner to carry back the loan kind of skips all that, and it's good for them because they're not having to take that big tax hit up front.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. So, so now you talked about the financial goal afterwards. So once you get a couple of laundromats, is that then when you start thinking about the financial independence, or can you start thinking about it right away and start implementing that financial roadmap?
Yeah, well, it depends. It really depends on what you're wanting to invest and what you need income-wise, because I mean, you can go out and buy a $1.5 million laundromat that's going to cash flow you $350,000 or more in a year, and you can be set, you know. Or you can go and buy a couple of small ones and kind of build your way up. And so it really depends on which avenue that you want to go, and how much money, how much cash flow you really want to bring in every month. Because you can do that all in one swoop, or you can do it over time through multiple laundromats.
Right. So I think you touched on a couple of things there. One is, you know, are you looking at making a ton of income and then from the laundromat, and then taking that money and buying a real estate property so that you don't have to have that 9 to 5. So then your laundromat becomes your 9 to 5, even though you're not there 9 to 5, right? So you're there a couple of hours a week. And then you've got now a growing real estate portfolio, which also then brings you what's relatively passive income if you're buying and holding, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But there's an even better way to invest in real estate with laundromats. If I'm sorry, I'm just kind of itching to tell you about this.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get out of you.
Yeah. Yes.
What's this financial roadmap that you're talking about?
Okay, so here's the way that I'm doing it, and this is all based on so laundromats are on commercial property, so doing commercial real estate investing with laundromats. So this is the way that I've done it and how it's benefited me pretty greatly. So what I've done is I've looked for, and currently one of my laundromats, I own the property that the laundromat's on, and one I lease the property.
Okay.
So the one that I own the property, this is what I did is I bought the property and the laundromat at the same time, and the laundromat's on the property. And that laundromat had some room to improve business a little bit. And so basically what I did is the business is in one entity and the property is in another entity, just as if somebody else had owned the property, and I wrote up a lease between the business and the property. And so the business pays the property rent, basically. And actually the business pays all of the property's expenses.
Yes.
So property insurance, maintenance, property taxes, all of that stuff. The business pays all that. So it's paying it rent and it's paying all the expenses.
Right. So my whole lease setup.
Right. So my property has all this income coming in and no expenses. So my net operating income of my property now is the rent.
Okay.
Because it has no expenses. And so what you can do with a laundromat when you have a property like that is work to improve business and then charge your laundromat top of the market rent. And so you want to charge your laundromat as much rent as possible. And it does a couple of things. On the downside, the first thing that it does is it devalues your laundromat a little bit. So if you remember, it's NOI, so that's your income minus expenses. Well, if your expenses go up, your NOI is going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes your laundromat worth a little bit less.
Okay.
But laundromats are only valued at 3 to 4.5 times that NOI. But what it does to your property is it makes your property NOI go up more. And properties, you know, I'm in the Los Angeles area, and so properties right now are selling at like a 4 cap,
Mm-hmm.
which is insanity. So that's 25 times the net operating income. You know, even if you're at an 8 cap or a 10 cap, that's still better. That, you know, a 10 cap is 10 times
Mm-hmm.
the NOI. So if your business is going down a little bit, your property value is going up a lot significantly. So you're building a lot of equity in your property just by moving money around. So you're not necessarily doing anything other than moving money around. And so what that's done for me is I bought a property and a laundromat, and then I did that process where I increased the rent, and it more than doubled the value of my property right off the bat.
Gotcha.
Almost, you know, within less than a year of doing that. And so you can really build a tremendous amount of wealth, and you're not losing any cash flow. You're losing a little bit cash flow in your business, but you're just moving it to your property. So you're not losing any cash flow. You're just building equity.
Okay. So when you talk about taking the cash flow from an operating laundromat,
Yes.
buy properties, you're talking about buying the land that it's physically on, as opposed to buying another single family house or something like that. Completely different.
You can do either. I think both are great, but I think if you're really wanting to grow your wealth, try to grab that property that your laundromat's on.
Okay.
Because
and then instead of owning and operating that laundromat, you rent it out to somebody else and let them manage it and run it and pay the triple lease on it.
Yeah, you can do that, or you can keep your laundromat, keep the cash flow from the laundromat, keep the cash flow from the property. Either way.
Okay, so there's two options there. So you can have a separate company operate that laundromat, and so then you're keeping that laundromat as opposed to leasing that out to somebody else.
Yeah, you have so many options, which is one of the things. I mean, you could then at that point sell them for more than double what you bought them. You can keep them and keep them for the cash flow. You can do a cash out refinance on the property. You can, take the cash flow from that and buy more property somewhere else, or buy another laundromat. You have a lot of different options.
That's genius, because I was just thinking, buy the land with the property, and then you find somebody else to rent that to, and then let them do it. But you're saying to keep it and have a separate company operating that as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got so many options there. It's great. That's when I got really excited, because my first experience with laundromats was not a good one. Because like I said, that broker basically led me, into a dud.
Mm-hmm.
But then kind of once I started putting all this together, I was like, oh my goodness, I just built over $500,000 of equity by just moving money around, essentially.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And you know what? So in Canada, we've got so much more land, right?
Yeah, that's right. You got a lot of land.
Yes. So, some of it is unusable and frozen, but yeah, we have that.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So I'm glad that we got that last part in, because I think it took me the whole 40 minutes to get this, to understand that whole strategy. I'm like, oh my God, That's brilliant though. So that's really, really good. Okay, so are you ready for a hot seat?
Sure.
Okay, so the way the hot seat works is I'm just going to throw a couple questions at you, and you just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Good
All right.
to go.
All right, here we go. What's your favorite color?
Orange.
Orange. Okay, very good. Where would you like to go on your next vacation?
We're talking about going to Bali for a month, so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Everybody in real estate has like these crazy trips always planned, because that's what we strive for, right?
I know. Yeah, that's the
So
goal.
you can travel for long periods of time.
Yeah.
All right. If there's something that nobody knows about you, what is that one secret?
Oh man, the one secret that nobody knows about me. That's a hard one. Man, I can't show this to my wife either. She'll know. I have a lot.
Filtering, you're like, I can't say that. I can't.
It's hard. I know. It's hard. Okay, so I have a daughter who's 6, and she's been very into Frozen 2 lately, and so the soundtrack has been on repeat constantly. I secretly like it. I would never tell. Frozen 2, the movie.
Frozen. Oh, Frozen 2. Oh,
yeah, 2, the second one.
Okay.
Just came out, and my daughter has been listening to it repeat, and I kind of like the soundtrack. I would never tell my son this. He's 8. I would never tell him that.
Okay.
But yeah, I kind of like it, and I've listened to it in the car without my kids in there. So.
Okay, gotcha.
Only Canada can know about that. If that makes it down to the States, I'm in trouble.
Gotcha. All right. And the last question here, are you actually a football fan?
Like American football?
Yeah, American football.
I am a football fan, yeah.
Oh, okay. Who's your favorite team?
My favorite team is the Bears. Chicago Bears. I think I started liking. I'm not from Chicago. I'm from LA. I've grown up here my whole life. But I think back when I was like 4 years old, the Bears won the Super Bowl in '85, '86, and I kind of jumped on the bandwagon then, and I've never gotten off, and I've pretty much regretted it ever since, because they haven't won anything since then.
Well, it's like the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think we've ever won anything, but everybody, like, the tickets are in like you might as well refinance your home to be able to go see a game.
To go.
They haven't won anything or done anything, as far as I know, significant, like in 10 years. So.
Forever, yeah. I know. The suffering we do for our sports teams sometimes.
So, all right. Those were all the questions that I had, and I'm so glad that we actually had this opportunity to connect, because I think this will trigger a lot of interest from people who are trying to figure out how to get into real estate, and for those who are trying to grow a portfolio but don't have a ton of cash to be able to do it. So this, so we touched on a lot of ways that somebody can grow a portfolio and also get into the whole real estate game. So I'm really glad that we talked. So I will include all of your information in the write-up. So, what is the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Bigger Pockets, Jordan Berry at Bigger Pockets. And then laundromatresource.com is the website, and you can go on there. We do absolutely free calls, coaching calls. So if you're somebody who's interested in laundromats, you just want to talk about it a little bit, we'll do that for free. And in fact, we do, because our goal is to help people find financial freedom, we actually will do for free. We'll coach you to get all the way into contract with the laundromat. So if it takes you a little while, we'll kind of help walk you through the process to help you get into contract on a laundromat or commercial real estate property, if that's something that you're interested in. And that's all free. But you can also just get in touch with us there if you don't want to actually talk to us on the phone. That's fine too.
Now, have you actually been to Canada?
I've been to Vancouver a couple of times.
Okay.
Which is Canada, but it's like pretty much America, but it's Canada. It's awesome though. I love Vancouver. It's great. That's the only place in Canada I've been.
Okay. So you just like touched on like one location. There's like a gazillion other places to go to.
I know.
So it just like, so really like all of Canada is open to potentially doing this, right? And so I
Absolutely.
think there's huge potential for people to, you know, to get into real estate, grow their portfolio, and get that financial freedom that everybody is looking for.
Yeah. Wherever there's people who wear clothes, they need to do laundry. And so there's opportunity all throughout Canada, all throughout the world, really. There's laundromats everywhere. So there's definitely opportunity, and yeah, we'd love to chat with you about it if you needed some help with it.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Thank you everybody for watching. Please remember to give us a like this way,
This way. Not this way, this way.
Yeah, click below, but like.
Yes. Yes.
I always have a hard time remembering that. Okay.
Yeah.
I will let you do the final sign off. Like if there's anything special that you want to say to somebody who's watching.
Hey, I just want to encourage you that, you know what, learn as much as you can, but learning will never get you to your goals by itself. And so you got to take some action. So I just want to encourage you today to go do something with this information or something that you're into. Go take a step, take some action, because it's the action in front of your learning that will get you to where you're trying to go for your goals. Yeah. So go take some action today, do something to move yourself forward in your financial journey.
Oh, Jordan, I love that sign off, right? Don't just spend the 45 minutes watching this, take it and do something with it now, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. I love that sign off. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody.
All right. We'll see you.
Hi, I'm Hong with Cash Property Inc. We help you, regardless of age, financial situation, and education, get as much money as you want. If you like our video, please click on the like buttons below and subscribe to our channel.